Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Uzomadunkwu and I'm a visual development artist and director in animation. In this video, we'll be designing an exceptional black boy character. This is the third part of a 4-part series. If you haven't seen the others, please check the link in the description. This video promises to be a lot of fun because I'll be designing 4 options for one single character. Sometimes when you're working on a pipeline, you're required to do like various options for one singular design so that the director is able to pick one that they like. And sometimes they don't even pick one, they kind of pick like ideas from the different options, and then it's up to you to mix and mash all of that together to create one design. So I'll be sharing my process and I hope that you get to learn something from this. So stay tuned. I am now on Patreon. So if you want to support my work, feel free to do that by checking the link in the description. If you haven't yet subscribed, please don't forget to do that. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's dive into the creative process. A pirate boy age 11 must decide if he will keep plundering helpless voyagers or save them from mythical sea monsters that he is gifted to see. His name is Rex. His power is that he has a third eye. Time period 1800s, setting fictional Solomon Islands. The target audience is 13 and above. Genre is fantasy and adventure. I begin by doing some research. I have to find references. I love to work with references. So I do like a Google search, gather as many images as are relevant to the design and stash them into a dedicated Pinterest board. Afterwards, I go about with the rough sketches, and this part was like really fun because I was just trying to explore and get a feel of what I want the character to look like. These sketches were done with references from my collection on Pinterest. And it was really fun because in the process of doing this, I was kind of getting an idea of what they look like with respect to not just their hair, their blonde hair, which is really unique. In case you never heard about Solomon Islands, it is an aquatic splendor, a country located in the continent of Oceania. It has a beautiful landscape comprised of 6 major islands, and the ethnic groups are largely Melanesians, followed by Polynesians and Micronesians. So here is my first take on the design. I failed at it. I wasn't really feeling that one, but then I continued. I started the second one, and I was thinking, okay, what if he's like this really cute little boy? And I was done with that option, moved on to another option. In this option, I was thinking about making the hair a little bit more to flare out, and was also thinking about him having like this clock hanging down his neck, almost like Flavor Flav, but I thought it was a bit cheesy, but I decided to keep it because we're talking about a boy here. For the next one, I looked at shifting the waistline upwards so that his torso is a lot smaller. So I was thinking about the weapon, and I thought about a crossbow because I didn't want to go with the mainstream gun thing. I was trying to avoid the classical look of a pirate, with the eye patch and the gun and all of that. So yeah, I wanted this one to be as original as possible because it was really specific, looking at the ethnic groups of the Solomon Islands. I really wanted to stay true to that idea. So I followed it through to the end and made sure that all 4 of the characters were as original as possible. So for the 4th option, his arms were folded initially until I decided to change that later on. But then I at first was thinking about how he could be different from the others, even though his head kind of looks similar to option C. I was kind of feeling it, and I wanted to make his torso longer, similar to option B, but it wasn't really working out, so I decided to make it short, and it was looking fine, to me. So I went back to option A and went back to refine it. I wasn't really feeling the face. It was a bit too stylized. While I was doing that face, I must confess I was actually using a reference from an actual figurine, a native figurine from the Solomon Islands, and I was trying to see if I could use that as a reference to stylize some of these characters. So I went back to option B, and at this point I was just going back and forth with all of them and just cleaning up the line work, making little corrections here and there, but I didn't want to make them too clean because this is like a rough sketch. This is a design. This is not like, I'm not gonna worry myself too much about rendering at this point, so I didn't need it to be like super clean. So in terms of proportions, I've measured out these 4 characters for you to see. There are slight variations in their measurements, but they are almost the same. The first one, option A, is about 5.5 heads tall. Option B is about 5 heads tall. Option C is 4 3/4 heads, and option D is 5 heads. Also, looking at the proportions in terms of how they vary, you can see that the torso of this one is really compressed, is compressed, and that's the same thing also for option C and option D as well. But then option B, I tried to make it different by making the torso more elongated. So I wanted to see if it will work if the torso is elongated and then the legs are shorter, and it turned out to be okay in my eyes. So that's pretty much it about proportions. So with respect to shapes, I was thinking about a circle and a triangle again. I know we did this in the previous video, but then again, we don't have too many shapes to work with. We basically just have a circle, a rectangle, and a square. So thinking about the personality of the boy is where the shape language comes in, because I was thinking about a child who is a menace because he's a pirate, right? So he's somewhat like a menace, and he has negative tendencies, so that's where the triangle comes in. But then the circle component is the fact that he's a hero and he's likable or thereabouts, or somewhat cute. So that's where the circle comes in. And looking at the design, you can see that the hair is like mostly rounded. I varied this shape so that they're not the same, because if they were the same, it would be like very boring and repetitive. The same thing also for B character. You can see how he's like really rounded, and most of the curls on his hair are also rounded. So this is very rounded. And then the other ones, we have like rounded craniums, triangular chin. This one also has a triangular chin, and we can imagine a rounded skull underneath the hair. This guy, option A, doesn't exactly have like a sharp triangular shape with his chin, but I tried to square it out a little bit so that it would be slightly different from the rest. With respect to the bodies, I was thinking about how children are not very muscular, so it's a bit tricky, but then I was still thinking about the triangle thing going on with their torsos. For this one, it's very rectangular because his body is elongated, but then for these other ones, you can kind of feel the triangular thing going on there. You can see that. So this was pretty much my thought process with respect to shapes. So with respect to the poses, I was thinking about having these 4 options showcase like different attitudes or personalities of this same character. For option A, he's not doing anything. It's really boring because he's just standing straight. But then for option B, I thought about him having his hand on his waist and then shifting the weight of his legs to make it look more interesting. For option C, I thought about, tilting his head slightly downwards and then giving him like this evil green type of thing to show that he's like a wild card and an unpredictable character. He has his hands hanging to the side, nonetheless his knees are almost knocking, but then we are basically selling the personality with his face. For option D, I was thinking about the hero pose. At first I had the arrows hanging by his side, but it wasn't really working for me because I was thinking, how would he be able to like move and do a lot of action with these like heavy arrows hanging by his side? So I decided to put it behind his back and then have him hold the crossbow like he's ready for action. So we're in the final stretch, and this is where I get to color the sketches, the various options for this particular design, this character called Rex. So I just do like an overall silhouette as usual, and then I go in and separate all the different components. And while this is going on, I'm also thinking about the line work. If something is not really working the way I like it to be, then I make those corrections while coloring. I definitely wanted the hair to be blonde because blonde hair is something that is very peculiar to people from Solomon Islands, especially children. What I learned is that as they grow up, their blonde hair tends to darken, but when they are young, it is usually blonde. So I'm just coloring these different components and also thinking about the texture, of the material. The coloring is very important because I also was trying not to make the colors be repetitive. For example, you can see that option D is red, is mostly red. Option C is mostly blue and yellow. Option B is like this huge purple. And then option A, I was kind of, experimenting to find a color until I landed upon the color that I settled for. And that was it for the coloring of these 4 options of Rex. Next we move on to textures. Textures are extremely important when working on a CG pipeline because you'll be required to define the various materials for the 3D department and look dev department. So for option A, we have a character wearing a bow tie. This bow tie is made of fabric. He has beads tied around his torso. He has a golden armlet. He has a wooden crossbow behind his back and wooden arrows as well. Then for this cloth tied around his waist, is probably made of silk or damask, and it has some specular highlights to define that material. For his watches, is made of different materials: leather, gold, bronze, silver, whatever, but we can tell that they are made of different materials by looking at them. Then he has raffia leaves hanging from his waist. For option B, we have a golden clock, and beads around his neck and torso. He has a wooden crossbow as well and 3 different watches. He has a leather belt with golden buckles tied to his torso, wooden arrows inside of a leather pouch, and a very expensive purple cloth in his groin area. For option C, we have a wooden crossbow as well hanging from his back, lots of beads, a wooden arrows tucked into an expensive silk or damask cloth. He has a leather belt or leather belts tied to his arm with golden buckles. We have like this big pendant that stands out, and this pendant is made of gold and various gemstones, with the green gemstone right in the middle, the biggest one. And then he's also wearing raffia leaves, as well as this non-reflective material below his knee. For option D, he's wearing a glass, the kind of glass that people wore in the 19th century. He has wooden arrows inside of a leather pouch, lots of beads as well. He has a leather belt with a golden buckle strapped to his torso. He has a golden armlet, as well as a very expensive red cloth in his groin area with golden accents. And then he has a wooden crossbow with metallic accents for the triggers. And that's about it for textures. And finally, lighting. With the lighting, I added rim lights around the various sketches. There's no specific direction for all of them. It was just kind of based on what I felt. For option D, I wasn't really feeling the design because the character had like this pouch of arrows hanging by the side that didn't feel very practical because of action, pull action, and all of that. So I decided to give him something more heroic, where he's holding the crossbow on one arm and the pouch of arrows hanging behind his back. And I was happy with the final results. Please don't forget to like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next one.